All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, the last Eastern Conference Finals video for this year. We have a new Eastern Conference champ, and it is the New York Knicks. I want to talk about the game a little bit, but I also want to do a little retrospective on the Knicks and what it took to get here after 2+ decades of suffering for Knicks fans. You're finally back at the top of the Eastern Conference. So if you like what I've said, like the video. If you have any opinions, comment it down below. And if you just like the vibes, consider subscribing. So yeah, I do have some notes about the game. I want to get through some of them, but it was really just, it was an embarrassment for Cleveland. But at the top of this, I do want to talk about the Knicks and what it took to get here and all the stuff in between because, well, let me say this first. Can we sing the song? Can we say the song? Can we say "Go New York, Go New York, Go"? Um, but in all seriousness, I do want to talk about as somebody on the East Coast and who grew up mm, monitoring the Knicks. We'll say, I grew up. I never really was into basketball. I was into other things, and then like when it came time to become a basketball fan, it was like, do you want to be a Knicks fan? Do you want to be a Nets fan? Do you want to be like a Boston Celtics fan? Do you want to be a Washington Wizards fan? Like, these are all in the area of where I grew up. And I was like, I don't want to be any of those. All those teams suck. I mean, the Boston Celtics were coming off, the championship years, but then it was like right after Garnett and Pierce left, so they kind of sucked. And then in between that time, when I was growing up, it really just came down to be like, do you want to be a Knicks fan? And it was like, hell no, the Knicks freaking suck. The Knicks suck. They were just awful. They were poorly managed for so many years, and to finally get back here is incredible. I never a lot. You're gonna hear this a lot from a lot of people like me on the internet, a lot of people on the radio probably, um, a lot of people just on social media. It was like, I never thought I'd see this in my lifetime. Genuinely, like, I never thought I would see the Knicks. Maybe, like, at this point, like, in the Eastern Conference Finals, that was it. I would never see them go to the finals in my lifetime. I just never thought it would happen. And it did. And I want to talk a little bit about how they got here and some of the players involved in this and some of the people involved in this as well. Starting with one of their, I guess, the biggest trade acquisition of this era in Karl Anthony Towns. There was a lot to be said about Karl before he got to New York. I mean, there were some things that were like, even just like mean things said about Cat. But in other terms, I think Knicks fans were just elated to be off the Julius Randle portion of this version of the Knicks team and get Karl Anthony Towns, a all-star level player, a proven player, a player who had been in a lot of playoff games, but sort of has melted down, we'll say, at certain points in his career in the playoffs, and managed to put together an okay enough resume. And you thought with what they had at that moment was Jalen Brunson, some of the other guys. Obviously, the Nova Knicks were no more. It was more so just the main core of players plus JB plus um, Karl. And you thought, could this team ever win a championship? Especially with like Tom Thibodeau as the coach. Um, and this is obviously post them making some other additional moves and them being taken more seriously just as a franchise, because like I said, when I was growing up on the East Coast, the Knicks were looked at like, you don't want to go there, you don't want to play there. Why do you want to play for the Knicks? It's not the 1970s, not the 80s, not the 90s anymore. It's the 2000s. You don't want to play for the Knicks. The Knicks suck. Um, and then obviously you have this group of guys, and you have Karl. And Karl, for whatever he was as a Minnesota Timberwolf and then a Knick, um, he changed his play style. And you saw it a lot this postseason, um, especially these first 3 rounds, yeah, heading into the finals now. He changed the way he played a little bit. Obviously, he was still that dominant floor spacing big, but he has bought in and he has fit and he has sacrificed. And that is something to commend and that's something to be really um, take a lot of pride in because, you know, you have guys like Karl, right? who are a top pick in, I forget if he was the number one or just the top pick in whatever draft he was in. And you look at these guys and you're like, these guys are supposed to be franchise guys. They're supposed to be leaders of teams. And I'm not saying Carl was never a leader of a team. I think in Minnesota he did his best. He tried his best, but his time was just up. Um, he got replaced by Anthony Edwards, who was more adored, more liked, um, better marketing material, I guess, than Carl. And Carl grew older with age, and it was like, well, Carl, we tried you. We tried you, Andrew Wiggins, and Zach Levine. It didn't work. We tried you, Jimmy Butler, Andrew Wiggins. It didn't work. We were going to New York, and in the moment, there was a lot of, understandably, there was a lot of disappointment for Carl that like he didn't get to do these great things that he wanted to do in Minnesota. But now, as a Nick, and maybe not as the guy, but one of the integral pieces of this Knicks team, he has done things he has never done before in his career. And I'm never going to say Karl Anthony Towns is my favorite player. I'm never going to say I was rooting for Karl Anthony Towns. But it is nice to see guys like Carl, obviously guys like Jalen Brunson, who we'll get to here in a minute, that get to reach the mountaintop, at least summit, and then we're getting to the mountaintop finally. Um, it's it's surreal. It really is. I remember watching Carl come into the NBA at a Kentucky, and you think, oh, I don't know about this guy, and then he wows you with the 3 point shooting, and then as he matures and as he gets older, he became a really great player, and he still is a really great player. And I think in New York, the pressure was lifted off his shoulders, not having to be the guy. He can pick his spots, pick his moments, and he's really transformed himself and the team. Um, Moving into Mike Brown and sort of the front office of things, I said this at the beginning of this year. I said I don't know if Mike Brown's the guy, for this Knicks team. I don't know if he can get them to the next level. The Knicks just might be stuck at this level. Second round exit, Eastern Conference Finals exit. They lost to the Pacers last year, and I began to think that they were never going to reach the point that they wanted to. And this year was championship or bust. It was, and it was well documented. Um, I came in as a Mike Brown sort of defender. I've followed Mike Brown for a long time. I think he's a hell of a coach. I don't think he's the greatest X's and O's guy, but what he is a great motivator and a great like people person. And you hear people like when Mike Brown was in Sacramento and De'Aaron Fox was in Sacramento, De'Aaron Fox in his last couple what was it, months there said, to the front office, he says, I don't want to play for any other coach but Mike Brown. If Mike Brown is fired, I want to be traded. And those things did happen. Mike Brown was fired. De'Aaron Fox was traded. And to me, that you don't hear that about a lot of coaches, and player relationships like that. And De'Aaron Fox to me, I'm a big De'Aaron Fox fan. So what De'Aaron Fox says to me, at least, I clock it a little bit. I file it away. I'm like, oh, okay, so Mike Brown, players like him. Okay, cool. And sometimes it's not the best thing to be liked by your players, but in Mike Brown's case, I think he loves the game so much. He's so animated. He's so, you know, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? In love with the game of basketball that like the players gravitate towards that. When the coach loves the game as much as you do, and they're not so much worried about the X's and O's and the analytics of everything, and the coach is worried about you as a person, you as a player, and the coach wanting you to have like the best years of your career under him. I think that really speaks to players, and he managed to do that. He managed to get this whole Knicks team to buy in. They brought in every little piece they could to try to cover every little bit of this roster. I mean, bottom right of your screen is the whole roster right there. Um, from like the little guys, not little in stature, but like the little role players to some of the other bigger role players. Landry Shamet comes to mind. Um, Perfect, absolutely perfect. Um, I think this team was so talented that Mike didn't need to be the greatest X's and O's coach, and I think that's why they brought him in because it's like this team will run itself essentially, you know. all Mike Brown needed to do was provide a little bit of guidance here and there, with his experience, because Mike Brown has been at the highest highs and at the lowest lows, and he's coached in yeah, he's coached in Cleveland, he's coached in um, Sacramento, he's coached in. Did he coach the Lakers? He might have coached the Lakers. I don't even remember, but he's coached, in some of the highest market places, and he's coached some of the greatest players, and gotten to be around greatness too. It's not necessarily always having to coach greatness; it's just being around greatness, because greatness is infectious. And I remember when he left the Warriors to go to Sacramento, I was like, damn, they just lost a really good assistant coach, and um, he was a really great guy, and he continues to be a really great guy, and just to see him in this situation, being the head coach, leading these guys, leading. Well, we'll get to it in a minute, but some of the greatest franchise players for New York. Um, we'll have to accept that in the near future. Is crazy, and I'm so happy for Mike Brown as well. And obviously, this all comes down to all these moves and all these things I'm saying come down to you know Leon Rose, World Wide West. Um, they built this every year, brick by brick, and year after year, getting those important guys, those important players. Whatever order it came in. Um, Getting people in, shipping people out. Getting OG Anunoby, getting Josh Hart, getting Mikal Bridges. Having Dante DiVincenzo, trading him for Carl Anthony Towns. Doing all these little small moves around the edges. Getting a guy like Landry Shamet, who wasn't even supposed to be on this roster. Was supposed to be Malcolm Brogdon, and Malcolm Brogdon suddenly retired. Keeping guys like Mitchell Robinson and unlocking him, and I believe he is the longest tenured Nick on this team, and um, not letting his deficiencies that he has um, discourage you from keeping a guy like Mitchell Robinson, who is important to have on a championship team, and getting a guy like Jordan Clarkson, who hasn't played so much, but he plays in garbage time and he just stays out there and he stays healthy, so these other guys don't have to play. And you look at guys like Tyler Kolek, Mohamed Diawara, Ariel Hukporte, just a crazy amount of names that like the recognition for these names has gone up significantly because they're on the Knicks and because Mike Brown and everybody has empowered each other to be the best versions of themselves. Now, finally, to the man himself, Mr. Nick, Mr. New York. Never gonna have to buy another thing in New York. uh, Jalen Brunson. Man, oh man. On the right side of your screen, actually, is the day Jalen Brunson became a Knick on the right, many, many years ago now. And then on the left is obviously him last night with the Larry Bird Eastern Conference Finals MVP trophy. Um, an amazing story for him, especially. Um, I don't have to reiterate this story. Everybody knows this story. When Jalen Brunson went to New York, everybody was like, yeah, okay, cool. Let's see what he can do. Nobody was the expectation for Jalen Brunson, and the pressure on Jalen Brunson was nothing because the Knicks. I don't want to say they were bad, but they were at a different point in their building up of this team. And nobody expected anything from Jalen Brunson really. Um, he had come off a Western Conference Finals appearance in Dallas. He brought in that winning mentality. He brought in, a different vibe, a different, I don't want to say style of leadership, but a different kind of leadership that the Knicks haven't had in a while. Obviously, on that team that he got to, I believe it was Julius Randle and like some other guys, and they didn't really have a leader. I don't want to say Julius Randle isn't a leader, but you prefer Julius Randle not to be your leader. We'll put it that way. And Jalen Brunson came in and I want to say changed them overnight because that's not what happened. He changed them year by year, playoff series by playoff series, wins, loses, wins, losses, all the stuff in between that Jalen Brunson has experienced as a Knick, prepared them for this moment. And just speaking to Jalen Brunson as a basketball player, from like I remember watching him with Luca and how well he played with Luca, and I thought, that would be a really nice backcourt. Luca and Jalen Brunson on defense, on offense, amazing cinema. It was great, um, and I think Jalen Brown again, like I said about Mike Brown, being around greatness makes you great. If you really want it, and Jalen Brunson being around Luca, Jalen Brunson being in that Mavs organization that has recently at least been more successful than the Knicks. Um, and the franchise just being well run, you bring those things to the next team you go to, and Jalen managed to build this thing. Every season, every regular season more wins. Every playoffs they go into as a group. Whatever iteration of this team, more wins, getting to the next round, getting to the next round, getting to the next round, and now it was enough wins at the right time, and the team was healthy enough to get to the finals. And I don't know if I said this on here, but I've thought it a lot because I've gone back and forth on it, thinking about it, and especially this playoff run was going to be very critical in this discussion for me at least. I I know I in my heart of hearts, Jalen Brunson is now the greatest Nick of all time. He's even if you want to move the bar a little bit, he's the greatest modern Nick. Like obviously you have Walt, um, you have your Frazier, you have Willis, you have all these other guys from like the '70s and the '80s and stuff that were really great in their own right. But I wasn't alive for that. That was a different NBA. That was a different style of basketball, and they're great in their own right. But Jalen Brunson is the greatest modern New York Knick. He's better than you know even Patrick Ewing. He's better than Carmelo Anthony. Even that small little blip in time where Knicks fans were rooting for Kristaps Porzingis to be the next great thing. He's better than Kristaps Porzingis. I think he's been past that, but those are just some examples of some names that pop into my mind when I think of New York Knicks basketball. And now, when you think of New York Knicks basketball, you think of Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, and the rest of the gang. What an amazing story, Again, I I never grew up a Knicks fan, so I'm not gonna hop on the bandwagon. This is your guys' moment. The people that are 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old. They've been waiting for this. It's been a long time since the Knicks were actually this good, and the younger fans didn't have to wait as long. But the older fans, they deserve this, and this was a great moment for not just New York Knicks fans, but New York as a whole, because thinking about just the early 2000s of New York, you think about the Jets, the Giants, you think about the New York Liberty and the WNBA. You think about the Yankees and the Mets, and the ups and downs of being a New York City X team fan. It's tough out there, and I don't think any other fan base has suffered as much as the New York Knicks fans have. And I'm gonna end this little segment with this. I know I clown on the Kings, the Wizards, some of these other teams of the NBA. And if I would have had this channel maybe 10 years ago, I would have clowned on the Knicks too, and tell people don't go to the Knicks, make fun of the Knicks and everything. But what what the Knicks have managed to do with the leadership that they have, with the ownership that they have, how up and down the ownership has been at times, now hitting at the right point where like the ownership's hands off, letting the GM, letting everybody do their job, has been beautiful. And I'll say this: after 2+ decades, speaking to the fans of teams that are really bad right now, Kings fans, Wizards fans, if the Knicks can do it, you can do it too. And I think we can all take a moment to appreciate how long it took and how painful it was at times, but the reward is uncomparable. Um, And obviously they haven't won the championship; they just won the East. But it does mean something. It means something to the Knicks fans, and I think even if they don't win the finals, the bar has just been set so high for every other team that comes after this one. And we will remember this New York Knicks team for a long time, and how just like suffocating they were to every team they played. The one team that was up in a series against them was the Atlanta Hawks. They were up 2-1, and then the Knicks just flipped the script, and it was insane. Anyway, that's my long, long preamble segment done. I just wanted to reflect on that because it's crazy how long it took, how the painful moments. I saw a lot of people posting old lineups for the Knicks, and some of those lineups are just disgusting. And it's like, you guys suffered enough. Here you go. Finally back in the NBA Finals in 2026. Um, let's hop into this game a little bit. Just talk about it a little bit. The Knicks won this game 130 to the Cleveland Cavaliers 93. And just getting through this very quickly because this was a rout. It was a blowout. It was like that game the Knicks played against Atlanta in the first round when it was a closeout. It was just like game's over by halftime. But I do have some notes here. There was no Dennis Schroeder for the Cleveland Cavaliers. He was out with an illness. I believe it was a fever. So he did not play this game. That opened up the door for some different rotations. Max Strus got the start instead of Dean Wade, like I've been begging Coach Kenny Atkinson to do. And to say Max Strus had a disappointing playoff run is an understatement. I think Max Strus at this point in his career, unless he's shooting the ball well, is just a little things guy. He just makes smart plays and smart moves sometimes, but if the team just isn't clicking, then those savvy moves and the smart moves don't reflect in the score at all for any team Max Strus has been on. But he had one good shooting game in this series, and the rest of these have just been kind of the Cavs started pretty well. Um, and I think the Knicks were sort of like hanging around and they were just seeing what the Cavaliers could do. And then the Knicks jumped out to a bit of a lead, a barrage of shots, and suddenly the Knicks were ahead and they never looked back. The Cavs tried their best to catch up, and then once the starters went out, the Knicks had the bench come in, and the bench included Landry Shamet, and Landry Shamet continued his onslaught from Game 3. Ended the game in total with, let's see here, 16 points, 4 of 4 from 3, 2 assists, 1 steal. Yeah, and I don't want to say the Cavs lost this game because of Landry Shamet, but if the starters weren't trying for the Cavaliers, the bench was certainly not trying. And then when the opposite team, the Knicks, have guys like Mitchell Robinson, guys like Landry Shamet, guys like Miles McBride coming out there and trying 110%, you're going to lose that game. And that's really what it was. A 22-point lead for the Knicks. The defense is like a horror movie for the Cavaliers. You know it's coming, you know? You know the was it like Jason or Freddy Krueger's coming, and you just can't do anything to stop it. You just can't. You just gotta let it. It's just gonna happen. It's just gonna happen. Miles Bridges hit a very tough fall away jumper turnaround to the corner, to the close corner, and that pretty much summed up everything that the Cavaliers had to endure this whole series. Was the Cavaliers tried and tried and tried and tried, especially in that game one. They tried, they almost had it, and then shots just kept falling for the Knicks, and the Cavaliers couldn't do anything. And it was halftime, and I wasn't very hopeful that the Cavaliers could come back at all. But you always hold out that hope that maybe, something said in the locker room, some inspirational stuff, some remember the Titans stuff, some sports movie stuff, like Kenny Atkinson's gonna go in there and be like, they can't beat us, we're some inspirational sports movie stuff. and even if Kenny Atkinson did that, the guys weren't listening. Um, the Knicks and Cavs come out from halftime and nothing changes. The Knicks fans travel to Cleveland, and they were loud in that arena. And Carr was great this game. Ended the game with 19 points, 14 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks, 2 steals, um, 2 offensive rebounds. Everybody else looked great. The whole starting lineup was almost in double digits. OJ Anobi 17, Mikal Bridges 15. Jalen Brunson didn't even have to like work that hard, even though he didn't shoot the ball particularly well. He wasn't even forcing his shot. He didn't have to. 15 points, 6 of 14, 2 of 5 from three, 5 assists. He was just chilling the whole night. Um, and as we wind down to the end of the third and essentially the end of the game, because by the fourth quarter the game was officially over. My last note here was this is torture for Cavs fans. All that hard work, 2 series going to game sevens, truly embarrassed at home. No excuse can excuse this kind of basketball. It was just unenthusiastic and sad. Um, I said this coming into this series. I was like, the Cavaliers have played 2 7 game series. It's going to be hard for them to win this just because the fatigue is going to start to set in. It's going to be tough. These Knicks have been rested for was it like a week. The Knicks had like 6 days of rest or something. It was crazy. Um, and game one, the Cavaliers came out and I looked stupid. I thought watching that game one in the first half that Cleveland, I was like, oh, maybe they're not fatigued. Maybe they can get one in New York. And then the Knicks woke up, and the Knicks woke up and never went back to sleep for the rest of the series. They just kept bludgeoning um, the Cavaliers, and it was just awful. Um, and there was a funny thing that Richard Jefferson said on the broadcast. It was like, you just gotta keep going. This is like after halftime, and it was in the third quarter. It was like, you know, people that certain players aren't coming through that door, and I'm paraphrasing it. LeBron's not coming through that door for Cleveland, Kyrie's not coming through that door for Cleveland, and you just got to keep playing basketball. But the Cavaliers kept playing basketball, but it was very um, on what's the word? It was just like basic level effort trying basketball. It wasn't anything crazy. At some point, Donovan Mitchell got up in the huddle and started like trying to hype his guys up, and you could see nobody was interested in listening to Donovan Mitchell, the star player of the Cavs, and it was a sad effort for the Cavs. I don't want to say I was surprised, but like I was just surprised at the level of like doomer mentality that they had. It was just doom and gloom, and they were just like, yeah, we lost this, whatever. They just didn't care. And to like I said, game three, it was over at a certain point, but Evan Mobley kept trying, so hats off to him. Donovan Mitchell, something's gonna come out eventually that Donovan Mitchell was hurt. Everybody was saying it this whole series, even dating back to last series a little bit, that it was a little hobbled. We'll find out what it is soon, whether it's in the next week, next month, at the end of the finals. We'll find out what it is. I don't like using injuries as an excuse. I don't think Donovan has used it as an excuse, but it will eventually leak out, and we'll find out what it is. Like he tweaked his ankle, or like his knee was messed up, or his back was hurting, or something. We'll find out what it is. Um, I talked about what's next for the Cleveland Cavaliers in my last video. So if you want to hear my thoughts on that, I guess just skip like sort of to the end of my last video about both series, Western Conference and Eastern Conference. Um, I don't really have any more thoughts to add about the Cavaliers. I mean, obviously there's thoughts of firing Kenny Atkinson, who I don't think that's right. I think that's just keep putting a band-aid on these things. It's just not going to work. There has been rumors buzzing that the Cleveland Cavaliers would maybe perhaps fire Kenny Atkinson to hire Coach Jason Kidd, who just got fired from the Mavs. I don't think that's a needle mover move. I mean, we've seen Jason Kidd coach in the East. It wasn't great, I mean, granted, this was like almost, was it like 20 years ago now, Um, Maybe it's different. Maybe Coach Kidd has learned a thing or two, and I think he has. But like, I don't know, man. I just don't. I mean, we can go. Let's say they hire Jason Kidd, right? Let's just say that, right? Um, how many coaches would he be better than? Let's play this game right. Would he be better than the Detroit coach, JB Bickerstaff? No, no, maybe no, no. Would he be better than Joe Mazzulla? No. Would he be better than Mike Brown? No. Would he be better than Darko Rajakovic in Toronto? No. Would he be better than Gwen Snyder in Atlanta? Maybe, maybe, yeah, yeah. I'd say better than him. Yeah, better than Nick Nurse in Philly. No. Better than we don't know who Atlanta's coach is, so X them out. Better than Charles Lee in Charlotte. Maybe just because Charles Lee doesn't have that much experience, but I like Charles Lee more than Jason Kidd at this point. Better than Eric Spoelstra, Miami. No. Better than well, what's the Milwaukee Bucks new coach? The guy from Memphis. Oh my God, I'm gonna. Jeez, Taylor Jenkins. Is Jason Kidd better than Taylor Jenkins? Yeah, so that's two. Is he better than Jordy Fernandez in Brooklyn? Yeah. Is he better than Rick Carlisle in Indiana? No. Is he better than Washington Wizards coach? Yes. So was that three out of all the Eastern Conference teams? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if a coaching change can. I mean, maybe a different voice in the locker room, but I don't know if anything can change this Cavaliers team. I just think they're destined to be at this point. You know, there's no, as much as I love Donovan Mitchell, and I think Donovan Mitchell's gonna eventually he's gonna get a lot of criticism this offseason. About not getting the Cleveland Cavaliers to where they need to be, because I said this at the beginning of this series as well. I said both of these teams, this is finals or bust. And you can look at the Cleveland Cavaliers and you can say, well, we almost got there. Almost got there doesn't move me, And I think I said this in my last video, and this is where I'll end it here in a second. But um, all roads lead to the same outcome for Cleveland. I don't think there is a world in which they can win the NBA championship with this group, as currently constructed. If you replace Jared Allen and James Harden with Giannis, maybe you could sell me on that a little bit. But like the current iteration of this team, and if you run it back, would be detrimental to your championship window, because you have um, next year. It just got a whole lot harder. Detroit's gonna obviously make some moves. They'll be back. Boston will be back. Some iteration of this team. New York obviously is going to be back. They're not going to switch anything up unless there's a devastating loss in the finals. Toronto Raptors are lurking. Atlanta's lurking. Orlando always lurking. Charlotte is gonna. I think Charlotte's gonna have a really good year next year. Miami's here. They're gonna try to make a move. Chicago is okay enough. Maybe not to make the playoffs, but to be like competitive. Um, Pacers and Indiana are the ones that are coming back next year to really be a force trying to make the playoffs. And yeah, it's just gonna keep getting harder for Cleveland. And I don't know if they have the necessary facilities to compete with these teams and compete at the highest level. And you could say, well, we have the experience. The experience didn't help you in this series. It didn't. It didn't. So yeah, that's it. I'm gonna stop rambling. The Knicks sweep the Cavs 4-0, a clean sweep, and they are the first team to move on to the NBA Finals, and now await either the Thunder or Spurs, tied 2-2. And we'll see what happens on the West Coast side of the bracket. I would prefer the Knicks to play the Spurs just for like historical value, because the last time the Knicks were in the finals, they played the Spurs, so that would be kind of cool. But as just a little note here at the end, I do think there is a world in which my eyes have been opened, and the Knicks could beat the Thunder, because the Thunder are banged up, and if the Thunder have to play 7 games and then they get to play a well-rested Knicks team, the Knicks might be able to do this thing. So yeah, that's it. That's the video. The end screen should be playing right now. Check out the video on the left. check out the playlist on the right. Probably both draft related. The draft's coming up here in about a month or so you guys can check that stuff out. If you click my little icon right in the middle of the screen, a little subscribe will pop up, and you can subscribe with ease. Like and comment as well, and I will see you guys next time. Cheers.